I am frustrated about where Weston McKennie is in his career.
Yeah, I'm sorry you're so frustrated, Matt.
I appreciate that. It's just I haven't had a glass of white wine from Spain in a week.
That's tough because I want to ease into
tough.
this.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Inside American Soccer. I am USMNT insider Tom Bogert. I'm joined by one of the greatest players in USMNT history, Tab Ramos. And Tab, today we have our good friend, the armchair analyst, Matt Doyle, back on the show. Tab, we're getting into the European season starting, and today we're going to look at a season preview for the Americans abroad in Europe. But for now, are you excited for these seasons starting?
Yeah, I can't wait, really. I know some of the games already started this weekend. And, it was a big pause between the World Cup and, it was hard to get excited for the European leagues after the World Cup. Of course, we had some MLS games to watch and some League Cup games to watch. So there was some soccer around. But, after watching such a great World Cup, it was difficult to get into it again. But I think most people are ready. And there's been some big transfer news around the world, and that makes everybody excited about their teams. But I think what's most exciting is that we have Matt back with us because, we miss Matt. He comes around. I think he's like, I'm starting to put him in that category of big star on our show because he just shows up. He just shows up every once in a while. He can give us a few minutes. So
yeah, I'm Gio Reyna.
Reyna.
I show up once a month.
And you just ready. So this is like hitting with the outside of the foot. You're gonna get your goal and you're gonna lead.
Yeah, we're up 3-1. Me and Tab did all the work to get into the lead. And Tab, we talk about Europe. We talk about being ready for the season. We need to talk about preparation because Doyle just got back from Spain right before La Liga started.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't we time this out? Why didn't you plan better, Doyle? What happened here?
He was doing his preseason, I think.
Yeah, that's correct.
Warm weather training.
One pincho at a time. No, I have to, when I go on vacation in the summer, I go to Spain every summer, I do not make it a soccer vacation. I need to unplug and make it food and wine and some museums. It's called culture, Tom. You should look it up. Maybe
he tried to sneak musems in there, Tab. Give me a break.
Right. Hey, he did mention food, but I'll tell a quick little story. When I got transferred from Figueres to Betis, I had a car. I had to take my car all the way down there, so we drove. It wasn't the days where somebody got you a plane and you landed there. So I had to drive across Spain. But here's my point: it was like a 15-hour drive or something from Figueres, which is right next to France on the Mediterranean, and you go all the way across to the southwest of Spain. So you're cutting straight across the country. We did that whole drive going through places where you couldn't see anything. It was and anywhere we stopped and we had a meal, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine being in Bilbao, what that was like, because the food in Spain, I think is hard to beat.
Yeah, I'm with you right there, and the fact that I have gained 10 pounds since the start of the World Cup means that I have to stop enjoying food and drink quite as much as I have over the course of this summer.
Hashtag diet starts Monday, as always.
Correct.
But let's get into the latest around the U.S. men's national team. Like I said, we're going to do a big USMNT in Europe preview, but first let's knock out a little bit of news. And some breaking news here on Tuesday morning from me. Sources say that the Philadelphia Union are finalizing a deal to sign USMNT center back Mark McKenzie from FC Toulouse. That deal will go through in January. Toulouse made it very clear to the Union that you could give us $50 million. We're not selling right now. And they found a compromise to pre-agree a deal for January. And McKenzie, 27 years old, his contract was up next summer. He's coming home to the Philadelphia Union, his boyhood club, after a good 6 or so years in Europe.
I mean, I thought this was one that Austin might have gotten in on with Jim Curtin, who honestly, it was Jim Curtin coming into Austin as coach, who's going to have something close to sporting director level control over the roster, at least input over the roster. So I was a little surprised it was the Union, but also you have to give credit to Philly for learning from their mistakes because they made a ton of them over this past winter. I thought you did a good job in your write-up on The Athletic, Tom, contextualizing Philly understands they want to bring guys like Neil Pierre through. Neil Pierre is going to have more success if he's playing next to someone like Mark McKenzie. And credit to Mark McKenzie, he went to Europe for 5 years. He's had a pretty successful time there. He was on the World Cup team. Now he gets to go home, hopefully to an MLS that is about to become more aggressive in the transfer market and better at developing players. Like we've already seen that, especially in Philly over the past couple of months. So I don't mind this for any of the parties involved. And look, if MLS is going to improve as a league, they need to be aggressive about making moves like this. I just didn't think it would be the Union because they have not been the most aggressive team in the world about spending money.
So really quickly, I did. It's funny that you bring up Boston because of the Philly connections with Jim Curtin and them. I like when I heard that it was possible Mark McKenzie was coming back. There's a couple clubs interested. I knew Philly was there, and I kind of just reached out like cold to Austin about it, and they love the player, of course, but that's more of like Philly are in a better spot for him than Austin is. Austin have a complete rebuild around heading into the Jim Curtin era when he takes over this winter, and while he'd be a great piece for anybody, they've got a whole lot of other things to do, and whereas this Philly team can just welcome in with a DP spot, there could be salary cap changes that we're going to talk about later in the show. Maybe he won't be a DP in the future regardless. But Tab, for two questions. One, what does this mean for McKenzie moving forward with his national team career? And two, as somebody who's a preeminent voice on youth development, do you agree with Doyle and I that this is only good for somebody like Neil Pierre, or whenever Neil Pierre gets sold, the next teenage center back that breaks through the Union Academy?
There's a lot that's good about this. When I saw your tweet earlier to break the news, I sort of had to do a little bit of a double take that it was Philadelphia, to be honest. But I'm happy about that because it kind of shows. By the way, Philadelphia's turning their season around, coming out of nowhere right now. And I think this is a great addition at the right time. If there's one thing, and I'll get into the national team stuff after, but if there's one thing that's really important about Mark is exactly, what Matt said about him being around Pierre. Mark McKenzie is the ultimate professional. He's a great person in the locker room. He works hard every day, doesn't take a day off. He cares about his team. He has all of the qualities that will help Pierre, get through. And a perfect reason that alone is a great reason to bring him in, because think of the value, right, of Pierre. And so anyway, players like that that he can help to come through. And then there's the national team part. I think he will benefit from that. But by the way, I give Mark a lot of credit for having been in Europe for that long a period of time, because he certainly didn't have to, and certainly was not doing it for money, because he could have come back at any time and found a spot as a center back for another MLS team for more money that he was making in Europe. But he paid his dues. He went to Belgium for a while, and by the way, it's not like we see the Belgian league every day. We never really saw him. He's in Belgium. We know he's there. We read about him. We watch some highlights, but we're not watching every week. And then he went to France, and it's sort of a little bit of the same, right? In France, for most of us, unless you're playing on, PSG or Marseille or Monaco or maybe Lyon, you're not really, I'll speak for me, but not really watching a whole lot of Ligue 1. And now he's back with a ton of experience, and hopefully he's back to Philadelphia for the next 7 or 8 years to help other players like him, he has been through the whole Philadelphia system to get through to the top and to Europe, which is he has been through exactly what every other player wants to do. And so he's a great signing in every way.
I couldn't agree more, and I think it's super interesting for the Union. Well, let's continue on with Americans and their news around the team. Ricardo Pepi scored on a Serginho Dest assist for PSV, so that's always a good sign. Austin Trusty scored for Celtic. But Gio Reyna, in a friendly, his debut for Strasbourg, he picked up an assist. Tab, I don't know what you made of it, and listen, it's preseason, so I wouldn't kill him for a bad performance, and I wouldn't go way over the top for a great performance, but getting an assist is better than not getting an assist, right?
I guess it's a good way to put it, and hard to add to that. No, I think he's back. Look, I mean, this is an important season, obviously, for Gio Reyna, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But listen, good. He came in the second half, got an assist. Good start, and let's hope he has a good season, because we've been waiting for a 90-minute game for 4 to 5 years. So really, and the only reason I think I want to add a little bit about Gio Reyna is because Mauricio Pochettino continues as head coach, because he's one of the ones to benefit from that, because he paid attention to him when I think no other coach would have paid attention to Gio Reyna going into this World Cup. And Pochettino's back, so he believes in him a little bit. So Gio still has an opportunity, if he does well, to be a big part of the national team, which is, if you look at where he's been for the last 4 years and what he's done, it's hard to figure out the reason why. But he's there, and he has an opportunity. And by the way, I wish the best for him, and I hope he does great. But, it's a good start.
Doyle, does this change your opinion in any way yet, for friendly?
No, I mean, my opinion is not going to be changed until he proves he can stay fit and he proves that he could sprint, right? Because even when he played in the World Cup, I think he had the lowest top speed of any player.
I've said this several times on the show, but it's worth repeating. Matt Turner registered a higher sprint in the game against Turkey than Gio Reyna did.
But at the same time, a club like Strasbourg takes a chance on him, gives him a 5-year contract, I think it was, and Pochettino calls him up because he has so much talent. He is, in my opinion, he's the most talented player the U.S. has ever produced. And he just got derailed by injuries, I think primarily, maybe some other stuff as well in terms of attitude. If it all comes together for him, though, at even 85%, he is a written-in pen member of the national team, probably even a starter. So, yeah, great start. I'm glad he was able to get the assist. I'm even happier he was able to walk off the field under his own power. And I hope we get that version of Gio 35 times this year.
This will be a good transition because we're going to talk about Gio Reyna as we do a USMNT in Europe season preview. I don't know if he's going to come up in this first question, but let's just get right into it. Who are you guys looking forward to have the best season of Americans abroad? Tab, we'll start with you.
I'm going to say Weston McKennie. He had a good World Cup. It was solid. He was pretty consistent throughout the games. And I think this Juventus team is really looking to move up the table this year and hopefully challenge for the title. And I think he will be a big part of that. And by the way, every time I watch him play for Juventus, he plays well. So there's no reason. I want to call this a little bit of a safe bet because I know that McKennie can't really play any other way. I mean, he will keep on trucking, and by the way, he's doing it for one of the best clubs in the world. So I'm gonna go with Weston.
I'm gonna go with Weston McKennie as well, Tab. This is what feels to be the first season in a while in which Juve doesn't have a new manager that decided they don't want McKennie and taking away his parking pass and changing his lockers only for September 1st to roll around, and he is just an automatic starter again. So that's probably nice for Weston McKennie that he didn't need to fight for a spot again this summer. But last year, I think, was his most productive season of his career. 5 goals, 6 assists in the league, another 4 in the Champions League. He played 46 appearances between Serie A and the Champions League. He's basically playing every single game for this club. And I was just so impressed by him over that European season, plus what he did at the World Cup, that going into the 2026-27 season, I'm just going to bet on Weston McKennie and like over. There's a lot of other good options. I'm not sure if any of us are going to say Pulisic. I know his stock's a little bit down right now, but, in October of last year, he was one of the best players in Serie A over the first 2 months of that season, so he's going to be in the conversation. But for me, Weston McKennie is just the safest bet. Doyle, where do you stand?
Well, I'm going to put it back on you guys first. What position do you expect Weston McKennie to play? And is there another level? Because, I agree with you. He's
ball player.
He's going to be right. He's going to run the ball. He's going to be a big part of Juve this year. He's a big part of Juve every year. Is he going to be a central part? Is he going to be the type of guy that the team is actually built around, or is he just going to plug one hole, plug another hole, and play a different position every week, which is what he's done for basically the past 3 or 4 seasons? And I think that is to his credit as a player, but has not been to his benefit in terms of developing into the very best version of Weston McKennie. And frankly, I'm a little frustrated that he's still at Juve and still in this kind of jack of all trades, master of none role. I don't know if either of you guys have thoughts on that, but if you do, shout them out, because I want to feel good about this. I am frustrated about where Weston McKennie is in his career.
Yeah, I'm sorry you're so frustrated, Matt.
I appreciate that. It's just I haven't had a glass of white wine from Spain in a week.
Yeah, that's tough because I want to ease into this. Here's the thing. I had a coach in Spain, Jorge D'Alessandro, who coached Atletico Madrid who coached me at Betis, great coach, by the way, who said to me, I happened to mention to him a player that I liked in the league, at one point, and he said he didn't like him, and I said, why? And I asked him why, and he said, well, I don't like him because he's a little bit good at everything. And I said, well, but doesn't that make a good player? And he said, no, I'd rather have a player that's really good at something, and then I know how to place him. I agree with you, Matt, and I have to say, I'm going to jump on your frustrated bandwagon here, that it's difficult for Weston because he does so many things so well. I mean, if we were talking about Weston playing for, I don't know, Bologna or Atalanta, which, by the way, is also a big club, but, or Venezia coming up, and he was a jack of all trades in one of those teams, I'd be worried. But, I mean, he plugs all the holes in one of the biggest clubs with, one of the clubs with the most pressure, like, in the world. I think I can't. Every week I watch him, I'm in awe because I even saw him play left back. We saw him at the end of last year. I think you and I were doing this show when he went to left back all of a sudden for Juventus. So he can do it all. I agree with you personally, I'd like to see Weston play that 8 role, and from the 8 role get into the box all the time and get back to defending his own box. I think he can kill it there, but he can do so well in many other positions. So, yeah. So I agree with you in a way, but at the same time, I think he's just so good in so many different ways that I think Juventus will continue to use him in the same way.
Doyle, who's your pick for the best season?
I'm going to be boring too. I'm going to say Chris Richards, and I think it's the opposite.
Boring.
I mean, it is a little bit, right? Because all the stuff we said about Weston, where like he's going to do this and he's going to do that, and he's going to play here and he's going to play there. There's none of that now with Chris Richards. Like, he's a center back, and it's kind of his team, right? Like, at least the back line. Like, he is the veteran. He is the guy who, like, we talked about the role Mark McKenzie is playing for Philadelphia. Like, that is kind of the role that Chris Richards is in now with Crystal Palace, with the young guys around him. I like that responsibility. I think that, that kind of pressure, like, he's already the best defender that the U.S. has. I think that kind of pressure for a Premier League team hopefully turns him into an A-plus leader as well, which I don't think he is quite yet in that locker room.
I'd push back on that a little bit. Maybe A-plus is where you're hinging on, but
you get a lot of A-pluses in school, Tom?
No,
were you an
not
A-plus
many.
guy? No.
Yeah, B's get degrees. That's what I know. That was solid. That's how it all worked out for me. But
you were like the Weston McKennie of school.
I prided myself on finishing assignments quick, and that has benefited me greatly in my professional career. So I think I did it right. But for me, I think he's a good leader. It is a good point, Doyle, that like it is another level. Like, if he is the guy in this back line, they sold LaCroix. They who else did they sell? This is a team. Marquez, obviously, that was last January, but this is a team not in flux, but there's a lot of change, and he's one of the constants, and he's one of the guys that I know that they will be relying on. So the only pushback here is they won the Conference League last year. They won the FA Cup 2 years ago. It can't get any better. Realistically, can it get any better for Crystal Palace? But I think he'll be fantastic, whether they're 5th or 15th.
And I agree. I agree with you, Tom. And I like the call that you're making, Matt. But it's a really gutsy call, I think, this year. Only because the EPL has so many great teams. Crystal Palace, I think, has been sort of gaining ground and pushing, I think, above their weight for quite a few years now, and I think it'll be difficult, to be, if he's going to have the best season of any American overseas, that means he's having a great season for Crystal Palace in a league that's going to be super difficult this year, and that means he's going to be one of the best center backs in the world. So I'd love to see that. By the way, I'd love for you to be right that Chris Richards has the best season of any player playing in Europe.
Tab, I'm going to keep it with you for our next category. Who's under the most pressure for Americans abroad?
I'm going to have to say Reyna. And the only reason, again, I go back to Pochettino. Pochettino's going to keep looking at him. And I think Reyna over the last, at least 3 or 4 years has gotten so many chances with different teams. based on potential of what one day he could become. He hasn't become that. I think if he doesn't do well this year, I know you talked about he got a 5-year contract. I'd like to know who the technical director of that club is that hasn't looked at the fact that he really hasn't played 4 games in a row, like in I don't know how long, like not even off the bench. I don't think. It's a tough call to sign Gio Reyna to a 5-year contract after the last 4 years we've seen. But yet there he is. And, he just played a half a game and he got an assist. And this can be a big season for him, or it can be one of those seasons where, here he goes again. And I just don't know how long it's going to take for people to give up.
So for me, and this is, Tab, I think that you're right in the general view. But for me, I don't view it as pressure for Reyna from where I'm sitting, because I feel like I'm pretty out, or I hope that it comes back, but I just don't know that it's gonna. And I don't want to do the thing where every week it's like, oh, did he play 30 minutes? Like I want to wait until he plays his way back on. Like if and when we do a fall roster preview, I wouldn't have him on it. And I think it's more about him climbing back on than being under pressure to defend his spot. It's like, is Yunus Musa under pressure this season? Like, I guess, but he's so far away from the picture of the team, and Reyna isn't obviously that, but I'm just sick of talking about a player in the hypothetical. Doyle, who's under the most pressure for you?
I mean, to me, it's Christian Pulisic. He is a central part, a big part of that AC Milan team, which is, one of the great clubs in the world. They've bet on him. It looks like they're going to sell Rafael Leao. He's on the outs, and it does look like Pulisic is going to be, I don't want to say the man in that attacking midfielder, but he's going to play an even bigger role than he has the past couple of years. He has a number 9 now to play off of in Gonzalo Ramos, which means there are kind of no more excuses about fit, about partnerships, about anything like that. Like he's in the club that has bet big on him repeatedly. He's in the prime of his career. He just came out of a World Cup where he didn't play well. Mostly that was due to injury, but it's also he didn't play well for club or country since the start of the season. There's a ton of pressure on this guy. I think it's by leaps and bounds more pressure than any other U.S. player is facing.
I agree because of his central role for AC Milan. So Doyle, that's going to be my pick as well. The only counter or pushback would be, he's so. I mean, I guess it depends on either what he wants or what the expectations are. Obviously, he's going to be a central part for AC Milan, but if he doesn't do well, then maybe there's going to be another move. Yes, there's, I believe, 2 years left on his contract, or 1+1. So that factors into it. But the other side is he's done really well for Milan generally since he arrived. He just played at a home World Cup for the United States. So if we're talking about is this the peak of his career? Has the peak of his career gone through? And I don't say that in a negative way, but in terms of most pressure, he's won a Champions League. He's played at a home World Cup. He's played really well in Serie A for stretches, and he's at an age where if he wants to go to Major League Soccer, like Saudi Arabia or something like that, like tomorrow, he would have already accomplished a lot. So I think it's not necessarily like a player on the rise looking to prove or looking to earn the next move. Like I think Pulisic, in terms of clubs that he's played for, is probably peaked. So he'll feel the pressure because he's one of the best players for the national team, one of the best players for Milan. But in terms of consequences, his career's pretty, strong as is. And I don't know if he plays poorly for Milan this year, we'll obviously think of him differently, but that won't take away Champions League winners medal. It won't take away kind of the goals and things that he's done for the national team or for Milan. And it will recalibrate maybe how we see him or think of him. But in terms of consequences for new contracts or consequences for legacy and stuff, I think it'd be minimal.
If I could just add to that, I would just say that I agree with all of that, Tom. I just think that, this is the season for him. It doesn't get, as I didn't put him in my core group of going into the next World Cup. I just think he has peaked. I think this is his year. This is a year for him. It's sort of like a maintenance year where he has to do really well to keep his position at AC Milan. And I think it will be a difficult season for him.
Yeah, we'll see under Ruben Amorim. I do like the fit, and maybe I'm just optimistic about Christian Pulisic this year, but there is definitely a lot of pressure. Next category, one player you're most interested to follow this year. I'm going to start Flo Balogun, because I do still very much think that there's going to be a transfer from AS Monaco. I don't know where it's going to be. He's been linked with Spurs. I've had that downplayed. There's been some links with like Galatasaray in Turkey. I think that'd be super, maybe not random, but I think it'd be interesting. I think he'd score a lot of goals wherever he goes. So Flo Balogun, because of the nature of where he's at in his career right now, his goal scoring ability and importance to the national team, I'm most interested to follow him.
I'm gonna go with I'm most interested to follow. I would say Xavier Gozo the most, just because I think he can have a huge upside really quick. If he does well. And by the way, I think of course, we're going to be patient with him. It doesn't mean that he's going to do really well right away. But I think he's the one that could actually explode this year. And it would be great if he got a couple of opportunities and he, got on the field and he made a couple of big plays. And he's certainly an exciting player. So I'm looking forward to following him.
Yeah, Gozo is my choice as well. There's going to be an adjustment period for him going to Crystal Palace, but his ability in the final third to eliminate defenders off the dribble and then his goal danger that he provides from out wide, that was something the U.S. had trouble generating in the World Cup. It's something that I hope we see. He's shown it obviously in MLS, but I hope he hits the ground running in England and shows it. And then I hope we get to see it next month in the national team camp. I will be very disappointed if we don't get to see Xavier Gozo in that camp. He's just such a bright, shining prospect, a productive one as well. And those two things don't always align.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Speaking of disappointments, I'm disappointed that he hasn't officially been announced by Crystal Palace yet at time of recording Tuesday at 10:30. A week ago, I thought this was going to be announced the next day. Here I am today. I'd still say the same thing, but lawyers are going to lawyer. The paperwork's going to go back and forth. There's going to be red lines on punctuation and sentences. It's very, very annoying. But as far as I understand, there's nothing to worry about. But hey, maybe there'll be more updates there. But it's costing him time. Like Palace wanted him to be able to play in their preseason game last weekend. Obviously, that couldn't happen because the deal wasn't officially executed because the lawyers are going to lawyer. But here we are. Last one here in terms of our season preview for Americans abroad. We're each going to give one bold prediction for an American in Europe. I'm going to start again here because I think Sebastian Berhalter is going to lead Americans in assists in top 10 leagues in Europe this year.
Wow, that's a certainly a bold prediction, but it can be.
Here's my rationale. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, your rationale is going to be that he takes the set pieces, and
correct.
That's going to be a big one.
So,
That's going to be a big one.
Of course,
I'm
sorry.
There's 46 games. He's a dog. I think he's going to basically play all of them. So we're just playing the numbers here that I think, and the championship relies a lot on set pieces. He's gotten an assist. What was it in the cup game against Wrexham? I don't know. I just think he's going to be such a revelation for them.
Yeah, and by the way, in order to do that, he has to earn time on the field, and I think in order to earn time on the field, he has to be playing well, and so that's all good signs. And I think he may get that. No, I wasn't going to take credit away from the fact that he was going to be the leading assist man by saying he's going to dribble 2-3 guys and slip a ball through to forward. I knew that a lot of them would come from set pieces, but it's a bold prediction, but I think it's a good one. It has good base. For me, no, go ahead, Matt. I don't know if you want to add to that because I think that's a good call by Tom.
No, I think it's a good call as well.
Yeah.
It's actually, I'm not sure I'd be willing to say that it's bold. I think it's a little cowardly, Tom. Do better next time.
Throw up.
I'll jump in. I'll say my bold prediction is that by midseason, Alex Freeman will be on the radars of the biggest clubs in the world. Like he's
so
playing
like Madrid, Barca.
Yeah.
Clubs.
He's playing for a Champions League team with Villarreal. So he's already on the roster of a very big club. But we all know there's a jump from Villarreal up to those teams. Whether it's Barcelona, Madrid, Bayern Munich, or like one of the truly giant clubs in England. I think he's that type of talent. Ooh. And the way he was able to adjust relatively quickly from MLS to La Liga, and then the versatility he's shown playing as a right back, right wing back, or even a right center back that we saw, I think, more with the U.S. than we've seen with Villarreal. Checking all of those boxes, and he's like 6'2" and can dribble and pass. Like it feels like there's no ceiling with this kid, and I think he's going to show it quick. So that's my bold prediction, though it might be a little bit cowardly, just like yours, Tom.
I think it's good. I like it. Tab, anything to add, or do you want to go to yours?
I think here's the difficult part, and I agree with all of the things you said in terms of his pure talent that he has. I think at Villarreal he will mostly play right back and not center back, and I think because of that, I have a tough time buying into the fact like all the big clubs are going to want him. If he was just playing center back, I could see that. However, as a right back and playing on a team where he's competing for a right back spot where it's not for sure that he's going to play all the time, I have a tough time believing that all the big clubs are going to be after him. Now, if it's not this year, maybe next year. And I think, Villarreal is known for selling their big players to Atletico Madrid. So that could be one of the big
specifically.
So that could be one of the ways to go. I'm definitely rooting for this kid because he was one of my favorites. He's been over the last year and a half since I think you and I were doing the show, Matt, when he started sort of coming through the national team. And so I think it can happen, but because of his situation and the club he's in and the competition he has, knowing that his coach likely only using him as a right back, I have a tough time following that.
Tab, what's yours?
Oh, and my bold prediction would be that both Christian Pulisic and Gio Reyna will be in MLS by the end of but before the end of next summer.
Oh my God. Both of them.
Yes.
That is certainly bold, Doyle.
It is, but it shouldn't be, right? Like this is a bridge MLS as a league should have crossed a couple years ago. When they got Messi, it was a chance to sort of turbocharge the growth of the league and become more aggressive, open up the checkbook, and really try to become one of the top 5 leagues in the world. And they kept kicking the can down the road. And now it's going to be a new commissioner, and we'll see some rule changes. We'll obviously see the schedule change starting next year as well. That would be a good time for the league to get really aggressive about bringing in the best and most talented U.S. players. A better time for the league to do that would have been 2023 or 2024. So it's bold just because MLS has been so hesitant and so conservative in how they approach this sort of thing. And I think that's been to the detriment of the league. And hopefully it doesn't end up being to the detriment of these players. Though I will say with Gio, with his injury history, man, it better not be the Seattle Sounders that he ends up on, or that dude is just going to spend the rest of his life in the hospital.
That's a good point. Hey, if it works at Strasbourg, if it works at MLS, wherever it is, we do all want to see him playing well, looking fit, and looking athletic again. But it's time for a quick break. That was our Americans Abroad preview for the European season. Up next, we're going to come back stateside. We're going to talk MLS with a big picture conversation, the impact the league will have on the U.S. national team moving forward, and much, much more. So please rate, review, and subscribe to Inside American Soccer, Tom Bogert and Tab Ramos, wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to Inside American Soccer. We did our European preview for Americans Abroad, and let's dive into MLS. And with MLS, yes, there are a number of first-team senior U.S. national team players in the league. Includes Tim Ream, includes Matt Freese, includes some other guys. Seb Berhalter was an MLS player before he moved to Borough. But the most interesting thing about MLS and its connection to the national team, because of where this league is in the global hierarchy right now, is with youth development. Whether most of the guys that were on the senior national team, even the ones that are at Juventus like Weston McKennie, came through MLS academies. McKennie and Chris Richards didn't feature in MLS. They were produced by the academy. One in McKennie left for free, and one in Chris Richards was signed by Bayern Munich before he made a first-team appearance for Dallas. But youth development is where the league is most impacting the national team, which is normal. That is the case for most of the other countries. Not all of them. There's some that try to naturalize players, some that have their players leave early. But development is the heart of MLS for the national team. So, Tab, I want to start with you. When you're analyzing the pro pathway, let's say, for the academy players to getting into MLS before they get sold abroad, or the academy players that are with the youth national teams through MLS, what is the league and its clubs getting right? What are they getting wrong? What do you want to see improve?
I'll start with this as far as youth development, because, anytime something negative happens either with the U.S. national team or with the league, everybody already starts getting up in arms about youth development and want to blame youth development right away. Like, how do we fix it now, right? And I would follow that by saying that we need to be careful in terms of like who we're listening to when it comes to youth development, because there's all kinds of shows, there's all kinds of podcasts, there's all kinds of people talking about youth development who have not lived youth development. And so that part for me is difficult sometimes, to hear people out in the world talking about youth development when they haven't had the experience of developing a player, developing a team, not knowing what an elite player looks like, not knowing what it's like to teach a player. That's difficult. And then I'll go into, I think, the most important part. I think that MLS shouldn't be in charge of youth development. MLS should just participate in youth development like every other club in the country. MLS, and I've said this before to MLS, I'm not going to say who I said it to recently. I said, why do you worry about youth development? It's not your job. I think youth development is U.S. Soccer's job. The pyramid needs to get a lot clearer. Right now, youth development is a complete mess. Players come from everywhere. And I think MLS should only participate in youth leagues that are created by U.S. Soccer that all have the same pathway. And at this point, that's not the case. I think, when I think of MLS being involved in youth development, by the way, let me separate here, because let's say two kinds of youth development. I think, of course, MLS teams need to have players 14 years and older, right? They need to have those guys. It's really important that they have them every day and that they get the most out of them so these players can be the best they can be. But going younger than that, I don't think it makes much of a difference. I think it's a headache. And if I see MLS involved in youth development anywhere younger than 13 and younger, I'm always thinking that the reason they're doing is because somehow they're monetizing it, and that's not going to be good for the game. I think the youth game should be across the board, the same for everybody. There should be state cups in state where like MLS teams participate and the little town participates in. Everyone should be sort of in the same leagues. Right. And then from there, the best players come and then they go to MLS, and then MLS does the best they can. But I think there needs to be a separation between U.S. Soccer and MLS in terms of who runs youth soccer. Why should a professional league run youth soccer in this country when there's other professional leagues as well? So I think youth development needs to be run by U.S. Soccer, not by MLS.
Tab, can I so I believe this happened after you left U.S. Soccer when you did 20s, but it used to be the Development Academy was overseen or run by U.S. Soccer, and in the last, I'm getting my timeline mixed up here, but at some point over the last, 5 years maybe, Doyle, MLS took that over from the DA, from U.S. Soccer of the DA. So why was that, if you have any insight, or why would it be if you had any analysis? And I guess, was it better, I think, was it, in your view, better for the long-term development of players when it was U.S. Soccer overseeing the Development Academy?
If you're asking me, well, there's a couple of different things, and I can say, the Development Academy had its issues, right? Because it was very selective. It was very, I think it was elitist, and then it had to follow certain. In order to play in the Development Academy, you had to follow a certain way to play. You had to follow certain rules. And I don't really believe in that. I think any club can have and play any way they want to. When you watch, I remember as a U20 national team coach going to watch, and as a technical director, going to watch random academy games, and you'd watch one 4-3-3 team playing another 4-3-3 team, and they all want to play out of the back, and the better team is beating the other team by 3 goals because one team just can't play out of the back. And I'm a believer that if you come from a team in Michigan who likes to play hard and likes to hit long balls into the corner, that you should be able to do that if you want to. That's your prerogative. That's the people you represent. That's how you want to play. You should be able to do that. And so that was, I think, for me, the mistake with the Development Academy. But I'll go further. If you have, the problem with the U.S. Soccer Federation not running youth development, when you have a professional league running it, now they sort of control the players, and they can allow whoever comes in and out. And I think it should be a free system for players to go wherever they want to. It shouldn't be run by a professional league when you also have other professional team leagues in the country.
Doyle, on your end, yes, it can be centralized with the league, but all some teams do it much better than others
Yeah.
in and around MLS, right? We talk about Philly, we talk about Dallas, the Red Bulls, NYCFC at times. Colorado have been good, particularly with bringing players in from outside. None of the Southern California teams are doing it yet. San Diego is going to be our best bet, but I guess in general, what are some of the best practices that you are seeing for both identification and pathway, and then selling players on from MLS clubs?
Yeah, I will say that I am not an expert on the development aspect at all. That's where I just listen to people like Tab. And one of the things that always stuck out to me is a quote from Tab from about 10 years ago. It was when you were with the U20s. I don't remember which player it was about, but it was something to the effect of, this kid's American, so nobody's paying attention to him. But if he was Argentinian, he'd have been sold for $6 million already. And that just speaks to me the lack of respect we have for our own talent and our own pathways and our own players. That has always been endemic to U.S. Soccer. We've always been like, oh, we're not good enough. We don't do it right. And by doing that, we have limited the opportunities and the pathways for our best players. And one of the things I'm happiest about, that's made me the most bullish on soccer in this country in a long time, is the fact that suddenly those floodgates have kind of opened in MLS and in USL as well. USL just sold a kid, Colton Swan, I think his name. Yeah. Sold him to Hibs, which is great. Seeing clubs at all levels of the pyramid suddenly realize, hey, if we have a talented kid at 18, 19 years old, get him first team minutes, help us win, but also help us make money, help us continue to be a going concern. And we're seeing that now in numbers that we've never seen it before. I mean, I just put together my 22 under 22 list for MLS this year. It's the best list and the deepest list that we've ever had. I mean, guys like Kevin Sullivan, Adrian Mehmeti, Julian Hall, Snyder Brunel out in Seattle, and it's just like Nico Chakiris, what he was doing before he got hurt for San Jose. These guys are stars. And I don't think these guys 10 years ago would have gotten the minutes in MLS that they're getting this year. So it feels like there's been a sea change. And maybe it's just we hit a vein of gold and suddenly or maybe it's just the new normal. And my hope is that it's the new normal, and that these clubs who have been so reluctant for so long to trust domestic players, especially in attacking positions, suddenly realize that, hey, if you put the ball on Kevin Sullivan's feet more, you could maybe change the season from hell you're having and actually win a couple games.
Yeah, and Tab, I'll shift this to you, but in the vein of air quote new normal of U.S. soccer, of youth development in this country, youth development takes time, right? Like, so all the investments that clubs have made, U.S. soccer, the league, anything like that, like, you don't just snap your fingers, put $10 million into your academy, and then next year you've got, high level players bound for Europe, right? That takes a long time. That's why Dallas, I think, we're at the forefront. And then you see some other teams that are coming through, like the Red Bulls were, I think, around the time they were behind Dallas, but then it was like the Tyler Adams generation that was coming through. So do you believe that this is that again, while there's always room for improvement and there's plenty of criticisms, there's plenty of discussion points and how to shape this for the better, but in general, do you feel that this is more about we're starting to see some of the fruit from the seeds of a dozen years ago or whatever the timeline would be in terms of investment and different thinking about youth development?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. The answer is that it could be that we could be starting to see that. And clubs, of course, every club in MLS and MLS in general is a single entity, right? So they're one company. So, of course, they're going to want to take over everything. That's what's good for MLS. I'm thinking more from just soccer in general. So I come obviously from a time when we didn't have any of this, but I have been able to live the growth from the inside on how all of this has occurred. And all of this growth has not come because we were limited to one set of people or one set of league running it. It was an open market for anybody. So you could have teams from all over the country competing against each other for actual significant competitions. But now, when I see what MLS is doing, and they have, of course, you have MLS Next Pro, which is, that makes sense because that's your sort of your reserve team. That makes sense. And then you have MLS Next, which of course that makes sense because then you can have your 15s, your 16s, your 17s, prepare them and maybe put them into that MLS Next Pro. But now you have MLS Next, but now you have MLS Next 2, which is not even okay. So now what you're saying basically is you're just sort of inviting any player. So now for me, that sort of smells like monetizing youth development. It doesn't seem to me like the type of situation we're doing it for the good of the game. I think the good of the game is for it to be open for all the teams to compete against each other. It's sort of, for me, like when people have the discussion, they have the discussion about promotion relegation, which for me is like, it's a ridiculous conversation because you can't ever have promotion relegation unless it starts at the bottom. It starts with the three of us getting our friends and putting a team together down in Tom's River, and now we start with our team, and it's a bunch of us, and we move into 7th division, and then next thing you know, some rich guy wants to come in and give us some money. We got a couple players. We move to 6th division, and then maybe one day we make it to MLS. That's promotion relegation, right? So this is sort of the same conversation for me. As long as the system becomes more close, owned by only a few people, it becomes more difficult to develop players. I believe in that.
Tab being, I just think that we could talk about this for 4 hours, and I think Doyle and I would be content to just sit here and listen to you give the points. Like, there are a few people as qualified as you are on the youth development front. It's just extremely interesting to me because, like I think my favorite part of this is like you said, teams should have kind of the autonomy. Like, you can give best practices and structures, of course, so that teams aren't just trying to play like the kids who like physically develop first and then winning games. Like, that's been an issue here for a long time in the past. But for teams to have the autonomy on play styles and stuff and developing different types of players, I am always very interested in that, particularly in a country like this. There's going to be so many different types of players, and it's going to be difficult to find them all. You look at a guy like Daryl Dike. He ends up making a move for $10 million from Orlando to West Brom. He's from Oklahoma. Where is the closest academy to him? And this is a kid who, it doesn't take a super nuanced town evaluator to be like, oh, that dude's 6'2", made fully of muscle, and nobody can be near him as a center back. Oh, and he can shoot the balls as hard as anybody. Like, it doesn't take like a great scout to be like, hey, maybe we should take a better look at that kid. And even he's somebody who kind of fell through the crack just because of the size of this country. So I just think that there's so many different ways to go here and so many different opportunities, but also pitfalls with just the size of this country.
Yeah, that's why. And I'll give you one more example on Control. When the Development Academy was going on and everybody needed to play 4-3-3 and everybody needed to play out of the back so that everybody could learn. Well, you're actually not really teaching when you're doing that. Because if you have a better team, let's say you're the Red Bulls Academy and you're going to play an independent academy somewhere in a showcase, and they're just not good enough to give you a game, but you're forcing them to play out of the back, wouldn't the Red Bulls be better off playing a team who has 10 guys across the line inside their box, kicking the ball out of bounds and trying to find their one forward that they have? It's a way of learning, right? So okay, you're the better team. Now you have to figure out how to break down a team that's not making it easy for you. That's not giving you 2 goals by trying to play out of the back. No, they're actually punting every time. And now you have to build, and now you have to break them down in their final, in their defensive third. And so when I was watching the games, I wasn't seeing any of that. Because teams were just giving games away only because if you did that, if you decided to come and play, a 5-4-1, it was sort of, you were penalized on style of play. And like, okay, so we're penalized on style of play, but so you're saying we're better off playing out of the back and losing 6-0? That's better for us? I don't believe in that. Anyway, I don't want to be too critical. I just believe I just believe like now that MLS is branching more into youth development, I think we have to be really careful with that because it didn't work before.
We can, scrap any other big picture MLS stuff because there's going to be time to talk about the schedule change, which will happen next summer, and talk about hopefully the new salary cap rules that are going to come next. There's plenty of time for that. I'll stick with development for the rest of the show here because you brought up something that I forgot about because maybe I've been trying to bury it in my head. There's Doyle, what's it called? Taka scores? they're grading up to what age? U12. You don't
think
get
so, yeah.
points for goal. Like you get points for goals, but like the game isn't graded by goals. It's graded by style of play, which just sounds like the most dumb LinkedIn idea I've ever heard in my life.
It does, and I'm dubious of it. I haven't watched any of the presentations on how it's actually done, and I am skeptical of all of this stuff for a lot of the reasons that Tab has said. At the same time, it's unquestionable that there are better players coming through the academies now. That something is working, right?
What are the taco scores, though?
Yeah, well, and think about that in the terms of the culture of Spain. Everybody wants to be Spain right now. Everybody wants to be France right now, with the way they're producing players and with the style of play that they have. They don't emphasize winning and losing until the kids are like 13, 14 years old. They emphasize what are you doing with the ball? What are you doing off the ball? They emphasize technique. I guess the Taka scores thing is U.S. soccer and MLS's attempt to sort of codify that because we lack the culture that Spain has or that France has or that Uruguay has in terms of going out there and playing small-sided games, and how you keep the ball determines whether you stay on the field. So I'm not a natural devil's advocate in this sense, but I will say something is working, right? Like look at the kids who are making the jump into first teams now. Look at the kids who are being sold to top European teams now. Xavier Gozo, we just talked about, $15 million. Would anybody be shocked if Neil Pierre got sold for $20 million? Would
After
anybody
Lucas Harrington for 23, that's the thing.
Right? Like if Nico Chakiris, goes to Feyenoord for $15 million within the next year, would anybody be all that surprised about that? So something has clicked. And we see it with the youth national teams as well. We sent a third team we have so many US U20 starters in MLS and overseas now that we sent basically our third string U20s to the CONCACAF Championship, and they tore through everybody before they eventually lost to Mexico's first string. So there has been growth. Maybe it's just there's more knowledge and there's more good coaches and there's more kids interested in playing. Maybe it's that simple. Maybe codifying style of play and technique at a younger age is the wrong thing to do. But I'll tell you what, I'm not the one who should be making that decision on whether to. I just look at the results and say, hey, somebody got something right.
I tell you, Matt, and you make a good point on obviously something is going right. And there's no question about that, obviously, because, I think when we watch our national team play the first game of the World Cup against Paraguay, I think we weren't shy, Tom and I, on this show to say, hey, this is the best we've ever seen a U.S. national team play. That was amazing. That was great. So, but I'll pull back a little bit on, I will say that is likely the progress is not so much directly related to youth development, but more youth identification. And the reason I'll say that, because there's a better pathway now. So you identify a good player, you can put them on a pathway, where before we didn't have that. And I'll go back to this, which you guys were probably not even born by then, but in the 80s, I'll give you some names, because there are guys that as I was coming along, I recognize, wow, these are great players. So there were players like Dale Irvine from California, Mike Fox from California, Rick Davis. These guys were super skillful, silky smooth on the ball, amazing players. Now, where did they go? They ended up playing in indoor leagues or whatever else. There was no pathway to Europe. There was nowhere else for them to go. So they played indoors for a few years, and then they retired and probably got a job. But these are great players. So the only reason I'm giving that example is because we've had good players here for a long, long time. And now I think you obviously, no one could argue the investment that MLS has made in youth development, the incredible facilities that they have. I mean, I know Tom's been there, and I'm sure you have as well. The new Red Bulls facility, if you think about
Incredible.
it, if you're a skillful player and you grew up in New Jersey or New York and you're next to this facility and the Red Bulls identify you as a potential, future player, and you go to one of these facilities, you have everything to develop. And so I think what's happened now is the identification is a lot better than before. There are more eyes out there. There are better places to go, and the pathway is better. But I'm not sure that we've fixed. When I talk about youth development, I think 6 years old to 12 years old. That's what I'm thinking of youth development, because the rest of it, I think the professional team should just grab from there, grab your hand, and take you with them. That's sort of my take on that part of it.
It's super interesting. There is so much to dive into with youth development. It's not likely to be solved on one podcast, but I'd like to think that with Tab here, we gave it a good, intelligent conversation and food for thought. And this is something that I'm sure that we're going to continue with, but I think we're running out of time here. So thank you, Matt Doyle, for joining us. Please sign up for his newsletter, Tactics Free Zone. It is excellent if you care about MLS, if you care about the U.S. national team. Tab, thank you as always for being here. And everybody else, we'll be back very, very soon. Thank you for listening to Inside American Soccer. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We'll be back next week.